The rain never stopped on New Seoul. It fell day and night, creating a peaceful sound that most people found comforting. Ji-ho Park sat in her office on the 15th floor, watching water run down her window. The lights of the colony glowed softly through the rain, making everything look dreamy and peaceful. Ji-ho was not feeling peaceful tonight. She looked at the numbers on her computer screen again and again. Something was wrong with the new tower they were building. Very wrong. The Morgan Reed Tower was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement on this planet. It would be the tallest building ever built outside of Earth. At 200 floors high, it would show everyone that humans could build anywhere in space. But Ji-ho had found a problem that made her stomach feel tight with worry. The tower was starting to lean. Most people couldn't see it yet. The tilt was tiny, just a few centimeters off-center. But Ji-ho's measurements showed that it was getting worse each week. The rain was doing something strange to the ground under the tower. She pressed her hand against the cool window glass. The rain made soft tapping sounds that usually helped her think. Tonight, each drop seemed to echo her worries. Ji-ho picked up her tablet and walked to the building's main computer room. The night guard, an older man named Mr. Song, smiled and waved her in. He was used to seeing her work late. "The rain is very heavy tonight," Mr. Song said. "Yes," Ji-ho replied, trying to smile. "Perfect weather for sleeping." But she wasn't going to sleep. Instead, she connected her tablet to the main computer and started running more tests. The building's sensors sent data to her screen. Numbers about pressure, weight, and movement. Each new reading made her more worried. The ground under the tower was changing. It wasn't acting like normal soil. Something in the wet earth was moving in ways that Earth's soil never did. Ji-ho remembered her grandfather's stories about the Leaning Tower of Pisa on Earth. That tower had started to tilt while it was being built, hundreds of years ago. People thought it would fall, but it stayed standing for centuries. It even became famous because of its lean. But this was different. The Morgan Reed Tower was much taller than the Tower of Pisa. If it fell, it would destroy a large part of the colony. Thousands of people could die. Ji-ho looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. She should go home, but she couldn't stop working. She had to find out why the ground was behaving so strangely. The rain kept falling outside. Its gentle sound mixed with the quiet hum of the computers. Ji-ho pulled up more data about the soil under the tower. There was something odd in the latest samples. The microscopic pictures showed things moving in the dirt, tiny things that didn't look like anything from Earth. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Director Taewon Kim. "Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Progress report on tower construction." Ji-ho's hands felt cold. She had to tell the director about the lean. But she knew he wouldn't want to hear it. The company had spent too much money on this tower. Too many people were watching. Too much was at stake. She looked out the window again. Through the rain, she could see the Morgan Reed Tower in the distance. Its lights shone bright against the dark sky. From here, it looked perfect. Strong. Unshakable. But Ji-ho knew better. And tomorrow, she would have to tell everyone that humanity's greatest achievement on this planet was slowly, steadily starting to fall. The meeting room was quiet except for the sound of rain hitting the windows. Ji-ho stood in front of the large screen, showing her findings to Director Taewon Kim and the other engineers. Her hands were steady, but her heart was beating fast. "As you can see, the tower is leaning 0.3 degrees to the north," Ji-ho explained, pointing to the red lines on her diagram. "The tilt has increased by 0.1 degrees in just the last month." Director Kim's face turned red. He stood up, his chair rolling backward. "Impossible. Our foundations are perfect. The best engineers from Earth designed them." "The numbers don't lie, sir," Ji-ho said quietly. She changed to the next slide, showing the soil analysis. Something in the ground is changing. The rain seems to be affecting the local soil differently than Earth soil. "Nonsense." Director Kim slammed his hand on the table. This project is too important to be delayed by your wild theories. The Colonial Board is watching us. Do you want to be known as the person who panicked over nothing? In the back of the room, Hyun-woo Lee watched carefully. He was the team's best structural engineer, and Ji-ho could see him taking notes. After the meeting, he found her in the hallway. "I believe you," he said, his voice low. "Let me help. I can run some independent tests." Ji-ho felt relief wash over her. Finally, someone was listening. "Thank you, Hyun-woo. But we need to be careful. Director Kim." "I know," Hyun-woo nodded. "We'll do it quietly." For the next week, they worked late into the nights. The rain kept falling, making the empty offices feel cozy despite their worry. Hyun-woo brought his own measuring equipment from home. They checked and double-checked their numbers. "Look at this," Hyun-woo said one night, pointing to his computer screen. "The lean is worse than we thought. It's accelerating faster than the Tower of Pisa ever did." Ji-ho leaned closer to look. The graphs showed a clear pattern. Every time there was heavy rain, the tower tilted a tiny bit more. "We need to understand what's happening in the soil," she said. "These readings show movement, but it's not like normal soil settlement." They decided to take soil samples from around the tower's base. The rain made their work harder, but they managed to collect several samples. Under the microscope, they saw something strange. "These can't be normal bacteria," Hyun-woo said, adjusting the microscope. "They're moving in patterns I've never seen before." Ji-ho remembered something she had read about the planet's native life forms. Most were too small to see without a microscope, but they were everywhere in the soil. Could they be affecting the tower's foundation? She was about to suggest they need a biologist's help when they heard footsteps in the hallway. Director Kim walked in, his face dark with anger. "What are you two doing here so late?" he demanded, "and with unauthorized equipment." Before they could answer, an alarm started beeping on Hyun-woo's computer. The tower's sensors were showing new movement. The rain outside had gotten stronger, and the lean had just increased by another 0.05 degrees. Director Kim's face went pale as he looked at the numbers. For the first time, he seemed to realize that Ji-ho might be right. But instead of admitting it, he straightened his jacket and walked to the door. "Delete these readings," he ordered. "If anyone asks, we never had this conversation. The tower is fine. It has to be fine." After he left, Ji-ho and Hyun-woo looked at each other. They knew they couldn't stay quiet anymore. The rain kept drumming against the windows as they made copies of all their data. They would need help to prove what was happening. Someone who understood the planet's strange microscopic life. "I know a xenobiologist," Hyun-woo said finally. "Her name is Da-yeon Choi. She studies the native life forms. Maybe she can help us understand what's happening in the soil." Ji-ho nodded. Outside, through the rain-streaked windows, she could see the tower's lights glowing in the distance. It was still standing, still beautiful. But for how long? Da-yeon Choi's laboratory was different from any place Ji-ho had ever seen. The walls were lined with clear containers full of soil samples. Each one had small lights and sensors attached to it. The constant rain outside made the lab feel like an underwater cave. "These are amazing," Da-yeon said, looking through her advanced microscope at the soil samples Ji-ho and Hyun-woo had brought. "Where exactly did you get these?" "From around the Morgan Reed Tower's foundation," Hyun-woo answered. He looked nervous about sharing their secret, but they needed help. Da-yeon's eyes got wide. "The big tower. The one everyone's talking about." She turned back to her microscope and adjusted some controls. "Oh, this explains so much." Ji-ho moved closer. "What do you mean? What do you see?" "Look here." Da-yeon stepped aside so Ji-ho could look through the microscope. "See these little creatures moving in the soil? We call them earth dancers. They're native to this planet. They react to vibrations, like rain hitting the ground." Ji-ho saw tiny things moving in patterns, almost like they were dancing. "Are they dangerous?" "Not usually," Daeyeon said. They help keep the soil healthy. But, she paused, thinking. Your tower's foundation, what's it made of? Standard earth concrete mix, Hyunwoo answered, with some local materials added to save on shipping costs. Daeyeon grabbed a tablet and started typing quickly. That's it. The local materials you used. They're probably attracting the earth dancers. When it rains, they gather around these materials. And when they gather in large numbers, they change the soil. Jae-ho finished, finally understanding. That's why the tower is leaning. The ground is literally moving under it. The rain grew stronger outside, rumming against the lab's windows. Daeyeon walked to one of her soil containers and pressed some buttons. A screen above it showed the earth dancers' movement patterns. Look what happens when I add water, she said, letting a few drops fall into the container. The tiny creatures started moving faster, gathering together in waves. Can we stop them? Hyunwoo asked, watching the screen with worry. Stop them? No. Daeyeon shook her head. They're part of this planet's ecosystem. But maybe. She walked to another container and picked up a small rock. Maybe we can work with them instead. Jae-ho felt hope for the first time in weeks. What do you mean? These creatures respond to certain minerals in specific ways. If we could modify your foundation's composition, we might be able to control how they move around it. Daeyeon was getting excited now, moving between her containers and computers. We could turn them from a problem into a solution. Just then, Jae-ho's phone buzzed. It was a message from the tower's monitoring system. The lean had increased again. They were running out of time. How long would it take to develop this solution? She asked Daeyeon. A few days to run tests. Maybe a week to be sure. Daeyeon looked at their worried faces. I know that's a long time, but we need to be careful. One wrong mix could make things worse. Hyunwoo's phone buzzed next. It was Director Kim, demanding to know where they were. They had missed an important meeting. We can't keep this secret much longer, Hyunwoo said quietly. The tower's lean is becoming visible to everyone. Jae-ho looked out the window at the falling rain. Somewhere out there, the Morgan Reed Tower was slowly tilting, degree by degree. But now they had a chance to save it, if they could just convince everyone to listen. We need to tell them everything, she said firmly. About the earth dancers, about Daeyeon's idea. Everything. The rain kept falling, but its sound felt different now. Instead of warning drums, it felt like applause. Nature cheering them on as they raced to find a solution that would work with this alien world rather than against it. The storm that hit New Seoul that night was the strongest in years. The rain fell in heavy sheets, making the city lights blur like running paint. Inside the Morgan Reed Tower's control room, all the warning lights were flashing red. The lean has increased by 0.5 degrees in just 6 hours, Hyunwoo said, his voice shaking. He and Jae-ho had been monitoring the sensors all night. We need to evacuate the building now. Jae-ho was already making the emergency calls when Director Kim burst into the room. His suit was wet from the rain, and his face was pale with fear. What are you doing? He demanded. You can't evacuate. The Colonial Board is visiting tomorrow. This will ruin everything. People's lives are more important than the project, Jae-ho said firmly. She pressed the emergency button, and alarms began to sound throughout the tower. The evacuation took 3 hours. The rain made everything harder, but safety teams helped move everyone out of the building and into emergency shelters. News cameras arrived, broadcasting images of the tower's visible tilt to the whole colony. In her laboratory, Daeyeon was working frantically. Her screens showed the movement of the earth dancers in the soil around the tower. The rain was making them more active than ever. The creatures are gathering in huge numbers, she explained when Jae-ho called her. The tower's weight and the rain are creating vibrations that attract them. It's like they're having a party down there. And our tower is the music. News about the leaning tower spread across the colony's network. Someone leaked Jae-ho's original reports, showing that she had warned about the problem weeks ago. People were angry that Director Kim had ignored the warnings. The Colonial Board arrived early, demanding answers. They met in a conference room overlooking the tilting tower. The rain drummed against the windows as Jae-ho, Hyunwoo, and Dae-yeon presented their findings. The tower is leaning because of native life forms in the soil, Jae-ho explained, showing them Dae-yeon's microscope images. They're responding to our building materials and the rain in ways we didn't expect. This is a disaster, one board member said. The whole project is ruined. No, it's an opportunity. Dae-yeon spoke up. She stepped forward, showing them her latest test results. These creatures aren't our enemies. They're showing us something important about this planet. We need to learn to work with them, not against them. Just then, a loud creaking sound came from outside. Everyone ran to the windows. Through the rain, they could see the Morgan Reed Tower moving slightly, its lights swaying in the storm. "We have a solution," Jae-ho said quickly, her heart racing. "But we need your approval to try it. And we need it now." The board members looked at each other. The creaking sound came again, louder this time. "Tell us your plan," the board leader said. Jae-ho nodded to Dae-yeon, who brought up her presentation. As the rain poured down outside, they explained their idea to save the tower by working with the planet's tiny dancers instead of fighting them. Director Kim sat in the corner, his head in his hands. His dream of a perfect Earth-style tower was falling apart. But maybe, Jae-ho thought, something better would take its place. The Colonial Board listened carefully as thunder rolled outside. The future of the Morgan Reed Tower, and maybe all human construction on this rainy world, would depend on what they decided next. The Colonial Board's meeting room was silent except for the constant rain outside. Jae-ho stood at the front, showing her team's solution on the large screen. Her voice was steady despite her nerves. "Instead of fighting the Earth Dancers, we can work with them," she explained. "They already keep the soil strong and healthy. We just need to give them the right materials to work with." Dae-yeon stepped forward with a small container of soil. Inside, the tiny creatures were moving around some new building materials she had created. "Watch what happens when we add the modified concrete," she said, carefully dropping a small piece into the container. The Earth Dancers moved toward it immediately, but instead of making the soil shift away, they started organizing it. "The new material contains minerals they like," Dae-yeon explained. "When they gather around it, they actually make the ground more stable, not less." One of the board members leaned forward, interested. "You're saying we can use these creatures to support the tower?" "Yes," Jae-ho nodded. "We've designed a new foundation mixture. When we add it around the tower's base, the Earth Dancers will naturally create a stronger support structure." Hyunwoo brought up the next slide, showing his calculations. "The creatures respond to rain by becoming more active. In our tests, they work harder when it rains, making the foundation even stronger." Director Kim, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "This is ridiculous. We can't trust alien bacteria to save our tower." "Actually," Dae-yeon said gently, "we've been trusting them all along. They're part of what makes this planet livable for us. We just didn't know it." She showed them more test results. In her lab, she had created a small model of the tower's foundation. The Earth Dancers had organized themselves around it perfectly, creating natural support columns in the soil. The rain grew stronger outside, and everyone could hear the tower creaking in the distance. They were running out of time. "How long would this take to implement?" the board leader asked. "We can start immediately," Jae-ho said. "The rain will help spread the new material through the soil. According to our calculations, we should see results within days." The board members talked quietly among themselves. Finally, their leader stood up. "This goes against everything we thought we knew about construction," she said. "But clearly, what we thought we knew isn't working here." She looked at Jae-ho and her team. "You have our approval. Do whatever you need to do." The next few hours were very busy. Trucks arrived with tanks of the new foundation mixture. Workers in rain gear started pumping it into holes around the tower's base. Daeyeon monitored the Earth Dancer's reaction through portable sensors. "They're responding exactly as we hoped," she told Jiho, showing her the readings. "The rain is helping them spread the mixture evenly." Jiho stood in the rain, watching the work continue through the night. The tower's lights glowed above her, and for the first time in weeks, she felt hopeful. They weren't just saving a building anymore. They were learning to build a new kind of future on this rainy world. Even Director Kim seemed impressed as he watched the sensors showing the soil becoming more stable. "I never thought we'd be taking construction advice from microscopic aliens," he said, shaking his head. "Sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places," Jiho replied. She looked up at the tower through the rain. Soon, they would know if their plan had worked. The next 3 days were the busiest of Jiho's life. She barely slept as she monitored the tower's systems around the clock. The rain continued to fall, sometimes light, sometimes heavy, but never stopping. "The sensors are showing unusual movement in the foundation," Hyunwoo reported early on the second morning. He pointed to his screen where red lines showed the tower's tilt. "The lean is still increasing, but at a different rate now." Daeyeon rushed in, her lab coat wet from the rain. "That's because the Earth Dancers are reorganizing themselves," she explained. "Look at these readings from the soil sensors." The screen showed thousands of tiny dots moving in new patterns around the tower's base. The Earth Dancers were responding to the modified foundation material, but they weren't moving exactly as expected. "They're creating their own support structure," Daeyeon said, her eyes bright with excitement. "It's like they're building tiny pillars in the soil, but they're doing it their way, not ours." Director Kim paced behind them, looking worried. "But will it be enough to stabilize the tower?" "We need to trust them," Jiho said firmly. She had come to believe in these small creatures that lived in harmony with this rainy world. They'd been maintaining this planet's soil for millions of years. They know what they're doing. The Colonial Board checked on their progress every few hours. The whole colony was watching now, wondering if this strange experiment would save their tallest building. News reports showed the tower day and night, its lights glowing through the rain as it leaned slightly to one side. Hyunwoo developed a new monitoring system to track both the tower's movement and the Earth Dancer's activity. The screens in the control room showed colorful patterns that changed as the creatures moved through the soil. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a new pattern forming on his screen. "They're creating a network of support channels. It's like they're building their own foundation under ours." Jiho watched the patterns change. The rain had become their ally, helping to spread the new material and keeping the Earth Dancers active. But the tower was still moving, and they didn't know if the creatures would work fast enough. On the third day, as the morning rain fell softly outside, Daeyeon made an important discovery. "The Earth Dancers aren't just supporting the tower," she said, showing them her latest soil samples. "They're actually making the ground stronger than before. They're teaching us how to build on this world." Just then, all the sensors started beeping at once. Everyone rushed to their screens, afraid something had gone wrong. The tower was moving again, but this time it was different. "The lean has stopped increasing," Hyunwoo said, checking and rechecking the numbers. "The foundation it's stabilizing." They watched in amazement as the sensor readings showed the Earth Dancers finishing their work. The tiny creatures had created a living foundation that worked with the planet's natural systems instead of against them. Jiho looked out the window at the tower, still standing proud in the rain. They had done more than save a building. They had learned an important lesson about living on this new world. Sometimes the biggest problems needed the smallest helpers to solve them. 1 week after they had started their unusual solution, the Morgan Reed Tower was still leaning. But something remarkable had happened. The lean wasn't getting worse anymore. Instead, it had stabilized at exactly 3 degrees from vertical. Jiho stood in the observation room with the Colonial Board members, watching the latest sensor readings. The rain fell steadily outside, making gentle patterns on the windows. We expected the tower to return to being perfectly straight, she explained. But the Earth dancers had a different idea. They created a perfectly balanced support system that keeps the tower at this slight angle. Daeyeon stepped forward with her latest findings. The creatures have built an incredible network in the soil, she said, showing detailed scans on the big screen. They've made the foundation stronger than anything we could have designed ourselves. The lean isn't a flaw anymore. It's part of the tower's strength. The board members looked confused. One of them spoke up. But it's still tilting. How can that be good? Hyunwoo brought up his structural analysis. The angle actually helps distribute the tower's weight better on this planet, he explained. The Earth dancers figured out something we didn't know. They've turned our mistake into an advantage. Director Kim, who had been quiet lately, finally smiled. It's like they're showing us how to build properly on their world, he said. We wanted to make everything perfect and straight, just like on Earth. But that's not what works best here. The rain grew stronger outside, and everyone watched as the sensors showed the Earth dancers becoming more active. Instead of causing problems, the rain now helped them maintain their incredible support structure. Look at these stability readings, Jae-ho said, pointing to the latest numbers. The tower is actually more stable now than it would have been if it were perfectly straight. The lean helps it work with this planet's natural forces instead of fighting against them. The colonial board leader walked to the window and looked out at the tower. Its lights shone through the rain, and from this angle, the gentle tilt looked almost artistic. We came here thinking we knew everything about building, she said thoughtfully. We tried to make this planet adapt to our ways. Instead, we needed to learn from it. The news spread quickly through the colony. People came from everywhere to see the leaning tower that worked with alien life forms. Scientists arrived to study how the Earth dancers had created their amazing foundation system. Jae-ho found Daeyeon in her lab later that day, studying new soil samples from around the tower. The Earth dancers are teaching us so much, Daeyeon said excitedly. Every raindrop helps them make tiny adjustments to keep everything perfectly balanced. They're better engineers than we are. Standing in the observation room that evening, Jae-ho watched the rain fall around the tower. Its lights glowed warmly through the darkness, and the slight lean that had once seemed like a disaster now looked beautiful and right. They had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the best solutions didn't come from fixing mistakes, but from learning to see them differently. 1 year had passed since the Morgan Reed Tower found its perfect balance. The rain still fell steadily on New Seoul, but now people saw it differently. It wasn't just weather anymore. It was part of what made their colony special. Jae-ho stood in her new office on the 180th floor of the Leaning Tower, looking out over the city. The view was slightly tilted, which made it unique. Tourists came from all over human space to see the tower that worked in harmony with alien life. The latest foundation readings are perfect, Hyunwoo said, walking in with his tablet. The Earth dancers are still maintaining their support structure exactly as they have for the past year. Every raindrop helps them keep the tower stable. Daeyeon had turned part of the tower's base into a research center. Scientists from many worlds came to study the Earth dancers and learn how to work with local life forms on other planets. She had become famous for showing how the smallest creatures could solve the biggest problems. We're starting construction on the new hospital building, Jae-ho told Hyunwoo, pointing to a site across the city. This time, we're designing it to work with the Earth dancers from the beginning. It will lean just 2 degrees to the east. That's what they seem to prefer for that location. Director Kim had changed too. Today, he was leading a team that helped other colonies learn from New Seoul's experience. Our mistake wasn't in building the tower, he often said. Our mistake was thinking we knew better than a planet that had been supporting life for millions of years. The Colonial Board had made the Morgan Reed Tower the symbol of their new approach to building on other worlds. Instead of trying to make every planet copy Earth, they now looked for ways to work with each world's unique features. Jae-ho remembered the fear she had felt when she first discovered the tower's lean. now standing in her tilted office while the rain played its gentle music outside. She felt proud. They had learned that perfection didn't always mean what they thought it meant. There's something poetic about it, Hyun-woo said, looking out at the rainy city. We came here thinking we would show the universe how humans could build anywhere. Instead, the universe taught us how to build better. The rain grew stronger, making beautiful patterns on the windows. Somewhere far below, countless tiny earth dancers moved in harmony with each raindrop, keeping the towers safe and stable. They had turned what seemed like a disaster into something wonderful. Other colonies were already copying New Seoul's example. Each world had its own unique life forms, its own challenges, and now builders looked for ways to work with them instead of against them. The Leaning Tower had started a quiet revolution in how humans lived on other planets. Jae-ho touched the window glass, feeling the vibrations of the rain. The tower swayed ever so slightly, not from weakness, but from the perfect balance it had found between human engineering and alien nature. They had built something that was better because it wasn't perfect in the way they had originally planned. We thought we were building just a tower, she said softly, but we ended up building a bridge between our way of doing things and the way things work naturally on this world. Outside, the lights of New Seoul glowed through the endless rain, and the Morgan Reed Tower stood proudly at its own unique angle, showing everyone that the best solutions often came from learning to see things differently.